The first thing everyone noticed was that the human diplomat didn't raise his voice. The council chamber of Carthax Prime was built for thunder, tiered stone rings, gravity anchors humming, banners of 100 empires hanging like trophies. War declarations were supposed to echo. Threats were meant to rattle bones. When species screamed, translators struggled to keep up. When they roared, stars listened. The humans simply leaned forward, placed both hands on the obsidian table, and said calmly, "We are joining the war." For 3 heartbeats, nobody translated it, because nobody believed they'd heard it right. The Vraxian High Marshal clicked his mandibles in laughter. "You!" he hissed. "Earth? You arrived in this galaxy begging for trade permits and disaster relief. You lost 3 colonies to pirates and called it a tragedy. This war will erase you." The human smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a diplomatic one. It was the smile of a man who had finally been given permission. "We didn't come here to beg," he said. "We came to wait." The war had been raging for 17 standard years. The Jacor Dominion versus the Allied Spiral, an elegant name for a meat grinder of broken fleets and sterilized worlds. The Jacor were ancient, disciplined, and utterly convinced of their own inevitability. They didn't conquer, they corrected. Entire civilizations were adjusted into extinction for the crime of resisting. Humanity had stayed neutral. Publicly. Privately, Earth watched every massacre. Counted every refugee ship. Logged every Jacor tactic. Studied their psychology like a disease. The diplomat straightened. "You think we're weak because we arrived late to the stars," he said. "Because our ships aren't pretty. Because our treaties are flexible." He looked directly at the Jacor envoy. "You think we don't understand war." The envoy's spines rattled. "You are mammals. Short-lived. Emotional. You burn bright and die fast." The human nodded. "That's fair." Then he tapped the table once. Every screen in the chamber lit up. Not maps. Not speeches. Battle footage. Jacor cruisers vanishing in silent blossoms of annihilation. Entire strike groups folding inward as space-time collapsed. Ground armies screaming as something unseen moved through them, fast, precise, merciless. The footage time-stamped 1 hour ago. The chamber erupted. Envoys shouted. Translators stuttered. The High Marshal lurched forward. "Those fleets were deep behind our lines." "Yes," the human said. "That's why we hit them first." The Jacor counterattacked within minutes. Their armadas surged toward human space like a tidal wave of metal and hate. They expected resistance. They expected casualties. They expected humanity to break. What they got was silence. No warnings. No fleet formations. No glorious last stand. Just emptiness. Then the stars started dying. Human weapons didn't fire projectiles. They fired consequences. Old physics. Dirty tricks. Weapons banned in human wars because they ended wars too quickly. Jacor's ships vanished as their reactors were convinced, politely, that they had already exploded. Others found their navigation systems rewritten mid-jump, emerging inside stars or each other. On the ground, it was worse. Human soldiers didn't charge. They waited. They let Jacor's shock troops advance into cities that looked abandoned. Then the buildings moved. Walls folded into firing angles. Streets became traps. The humans used gravity like a blunt instrument, slamming invaders into the pavement until even their exoskeletons cracked. A Jacor commander screamed into the void. "They fight like predators!" A human sergeant replied over open comms, voice tired and amused. "No. We fight like survivors." In orbit above the shattered world of Nethra 9, an aging human battleship drifted, hull scarred, name barely visible, Second Chance. Inside, Captain Mara Ellison watched her tactical display with a cigarette she never lit. "Remind me," her first officer said, "why we let them live for so long?" Ellison exhaled. "Because now they know who did this." The twist didn't come from the battlefield. It came from history. The Jacques finally did what humans had hoped they'd do: they attacked Earth. Not a raid. Not a probe. Extermination. The armada that arrived over Sol was older than human civilization. Weapons powered by stars. Commanders who had ended thousands of species. They broadcast one message: surrender, and we will make your extinction painless. The human response was immediate. The diplomat, same man, same calm voice, appeared on every channel. We already surrendered, he said. 70 years ago. To our own ghosts. Then Earth went dark. The armada fired. Nothing happened. No explosions. No planetary shields. No debris. Just absence. Earth wasn't destroyed. It was gone. The Jacques panicked. Scanners screamed errors. Gravity maps folded into nonsense. Sol was still there, but the planet wasn't. Then something arrived. Earth reappeared behind the armada. Not where it had been. Where it shouldn't be. Human scientists had learned something during first contact: space was negotiable. And humans were very good at negotiating when angry. The planet's re-entry into real space tore the Jacques formation apart. Tidal forces ripped capital ships in half. Moons shifted. Stars flared. A final transmission echoed across the system. We didn't move our world to save it, the diplomat said softly. We moved it so you could watch. The counter-strike lasted 6 minutes. At the end, the armada was gone. So was the Jacques High Command. So was the Dominion. The war ended the next day. The Allied spiral declared humanity the savior of the galaxy. Statues were commissioned. Treaties were rewritten. Borders were redrawn with human input. Earth declined most of it. Instead, the diplomat returned to the council chamber, now quieter, emptier. We didn't join the war to win, he said. We joined to finish it. An alien envoy asked, trembling. What happens now? The human thought for a moment. Now, he said. Now we rebuild. Together. Or we don't. He smiled again, less sharp this time, but no less dangerous. Because if there's one thing humans are better at than war, it's remembering who made us fight. And somewhere in the dark between stars, every surviving species understood the truth at last. Humanity hadn't arrived late to the galaxy. They had arrived angry. The Jacques counterattack came faster than anyone had predicted. Their armadas surged toward human space like a tidal wave of steel and malice. They expected resistance. They expected casualties. They expected humanity to break. What they didn't expect was silence. For days, nothing happened. No signals, no fleet formations, no warning shots. Just emptiness. Then the first attack came, not at a fleet, not at a city, but at a communication relay. The Jacques assumed it was a minor skirmish. They were wrong. Human ships didn't fire projectiles. They fired consequences. Old physics. Dirty tricks. Weapons banned in human wars for how decisively they ended things. A cruiser approached Sol's outer perimeter, confidence in its systems. Its scanners read Earth, and weak. It was wrong. Systems blinked. The hull shivered. The stars themselves seemed to whisper warnings no Jacques could translate. In the next heartbeat, the cruiser blinked out of existence. Its sensors reported a neutron star where there had been nothing. On the ground, it was worse. Jacques' shock troops landed on Nethra 9 expecting easy conquest. The cities were silent. The streets were empty, or so it seemed. Then buildings moved. Walls twisted into firing angles. Streets folded like origami. Gravity became a blunt instrument. Invaders were slammed into pavement and steel with such precision that even exoskeletons shattered. Report! A Jacques commander barked into the comms. His voice was tight, quivering. They fight like predators! A human sergeant replied over the open channel, calm and almost bored. No. We fight like survivors. The galaxy began to murmur. Words spread like wildfire. Humanity didn't just fight back, they planned. They didn't just survive, They executed the sort of retaliation that seemed impossible for a species so soft and short-lived. In orbit above the smoldering ruins of Nethra 9, Captain Mara Ellison of the Second Chance studied her tactical display. Hull scarred, systems strained, cigarette dangling from her fingers, though she hadn't lit it yet. "Remind me why we let them live for so long?" asked her first officer, eyes scanning the sensor feeds of approaching Jacor reinforcements. Ellison exhaled slowly. "Because now they know who did this. And fear is a better weapon than any gun." Every human soldier, every ship, every system had waited patiently for this moment. The aliens had thought humanity weak, delayed, disorganized. Humanity had waited to turn that arrogance into a weapon sharper than plasma or blade. The first fleets that had dismissed Earth were gone now, swallowed by spatial anomalies the humans had engineered, simple enough to understand for humans, impossible to counter for Jacor. The galaxy was beginning to understand a dangerous truth: human cunning wasn't chaotic. It was terrifyingly precise. And the war, until now a distant story told by survivors of other systems, had changed. Humans weren't just participating anymore, they were dictating its terms. The Jacor finally did what the humans had been waiting for: they attacked Earth. Not a probe. Not a token raid. An extermination fleet, armadas older than humanity itself, weapons powered by dying stars, commanders who had ended thousands of species without hesitation. Their broadcast was chillingly calm. "Surrender, and we will make your extinction painless." The human diplomat appeared on every channel at once, voice steady, calm, almost gentle. "We already surrendered," he said. 70 years ago. To our own ghosts." The fleet fired. Nothing happened. Not a single explosion. Not a shred of debris. Sensors screamed errors. Systems failed to read mass, energy, or gravity. Earth wasn't just resisting, it had disappeared. Panic rippled through the Jacor command. The High Marshal bellowed into the void, antennas quivering. "Impossible! The planet, where is it?" The diplomat's voice cut across the comms again. "It's exactly where it needs to be. Behind you." Every sensor in the fleet blinked. Stars flared. Navigation systems went haywire. The human-engineered planet reappeared, not in its normal orbit, but in the middle of the Jacor armada. Gravity tore ships apart, hulls twisted like paper. Capital ships collided with moons. Warships vanished into uncharted anomalies. "They moved the planet," a Jacor commander whispered, disbelief choking his words. The human diplomat's calm continued, almost casual. "We didn't move our world to save it. We moved it so you could watch." The fleet's destruction lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, the Jacor High Command was gone. The Dominion was gone. Thousands of years of empire had been erased in moments. And the humans didn't celebrate. They simply stood in orbit, ships battered but intact, watching the stars settle. Captain Mara Ellison looked at her first officer, smoke curling from the vents of her ship's engine banks. "They always wanted to see the fight," she said softly. "Now they're seeing the consequences." The diplomat returned to the now silent Galactic Council, where alien delegates, trembling and shocked, tried to comprehend the scale of what had just happened. "We didn't join the war to win," he said, voice carrying the weight of history and vengeance. "We joined to finish it." An alien envoy, antennae quivering, asked, "What happens now?" The diplomat paused, letting the words hang in the chamber like a sword. Then he smiled, calm, terrifying, unyielding. "No," he said. "We rebuild. Together. Or we don't. Because if there's one thing humans are better at than war." He leaned forward, letting the silence punctuate his next words. "It's remembering who made us fight." And somewhere in the dark between stars, every surviving species understood a chilling truth. Humanity had not arrived late to the galaxy. They had arrived angry. The war ended the next day. The Allied Spiral declared humanity the savior of the galaxy. Statues were commissioned. Treaties were rewritten. Borders were redrawn with human input. Entire civilizations that had once cowered in fear now looked to Earth as a beacon. And yet, Earth itself declined most of it. The humans didn't march in triumph, didn't demand fealty, didn't call themselves conquerors. They returned to their own orbit, their own systems, their own fractured planet, because victory was never about empire. It was about survival, memory, and choice. The diplomat walked through the quiet council chamber, now stripped of war banners and frantic delegates, only the echoes of alien disbelief remaining. "We didn't join the war to be heroes," he said, voice soft but carrying. "We joined to finish it. And to remind everyone what happens when you underestimate us." An alien envoy, still trembling, asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Why stop there? You could have erased more, controlled more. Why not?" The diplomat looked at him, eyes calm but unyielding. "Because we don't conquer. We retaliate. We remember. And we leave choices, even for our enemies." Captain Mara Ellison stood on the deck of the Second Chance, watching the last of the debris from the Jacques Armada dissolve into the void. She exhaled, cigarette finally lit, the smoke curling in zero gravity. "Remind me why we fight so hard, Mara?" her first officer asked. Ellison smiled faintly, eyes cold yet proud. "Because if they remember us, they remember what happens when you make us angry. That's enough. That's all anyone should need to know." In the weeks that followed, alien ambassadors came to Earth, cautiously seeking alliance, guidance, even forgiveness. And humanity, as always, was unpredictable. They welcomed some. They ignored others. They set terms. They listened, but they never forgot. The galaxy learned something it had never understood. Humans didn't need empires or fleets to be feared. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, tactics, or brute force. It was ingenuity combined with unbreakable will. And somewhere, in the void between stars, the surviving species whispered a truth they would never admit aloud. Humanity hadn't arrived late. Humanity hadn't stumbled into the galactic stage by accident. They had arrived to settle a score, and the universe would never, ever underestimate them again. The diplomat, standing in the quiet of the council chamber, spoke one last time to the empty seats. "Wars are easy to start," he said. "The hard part is making sure no one forgets why they shouldn't. That's our gift. That's our curse. That's us." And the galaxy shivered in acknowledgement. Because for all their faults, their stubbornness, and their anger, humans had reminded every species of one immutable fact. When humanity decides, everything changes. This completes the 4-part HFY story arc, Part 1, Setup and Tension, Part 2, First Strikes and Human Cunning, Part 3, Shocking Twist and Retaliation, and Part 4, Aftermath and Moral Complexity.